Okay, just sit yourself onto your lift and then come into a good cross-legged position. Just have a little wriggle about, just make sure you're feeling evenly placed. Hold onto your knees and then elevate your heart area upwards. Draw your shoulders down away from your ears. Just look down at something that doesn't move. So just spend a moment just observing how your body is feeling right now. Where there is some resistance, where there is freedom. Just breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, listening to the breath. Just close your eyes for a moment and observe your breath. Observing your in-breath and your out-breath. Observing how the chest rises upwards and outwards with the in-breath, and then lowers and relaxes with the out-breath. Observe your abdomen's role in your breath. Release your knees, bring your hands into Namaste. Press in the palms firmly together, lengthening from your armpits and into your elbows. So you give yourself space in the chest. Keep the heart area elevating upwards and the shoulders drawing downwards. So maintaining closed eyes and observing the breath. Just observe how your breath feels, whether it is deep or shallow. Aim to make the breath deliberately deeper, but without consciously controlling the breath, without holding the breath. And then gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Lift your chest up to meet your chin. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude, of thankfulness for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area as you release the backs of your hands, your knees, palms facing upwards. Connecting the index finger with the thumb and stretching the other fingers away from the palms, just a gesture of wisdom and peacefulness that we can carry into our practice. And then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Hold on to your knees, lift up into the chest, elevating the heart area really consciously upwards and drawing your shoulders down at the same time. So drawing the shoulders away from your ears, but elevating the heart area upwards. So there's a little juxtaposition between this action and that action. And then turn to the right side, drawing your abdomen across your ribs and your shoulders. Just listening to the breath. And then come back to the center. Hold on to your knees, lift up into the chest. Take a deep inhalation through the nose if you can, and then turn to the left. Just observing how your body perhaps initially resists that initial turn. And then come back to the center. So just come off your lift, sit back on your heels, come into Adho Mukha Virabhadrasana. But before you come forwards, just observe how your legs just connect to the ground. Just feel the shins driving themselves into the mat. Maybe if you've got a hard floor, maybe if you've got a soft floor, the shins make good contact with the floor. But if you've got quite a hard floor, if you haven't got carpet on it, for example, then maybe the shins don't connect to the ground very easily. So consciously push the shins really firmly into the floor. Everyone do that. Press the shins really consciously into the floor, pushing the shin bone into the shin skin. And then feel how your thighs activate. Feel that your knees are kind of quite firmly placed on the floor, but then try and almost spread them so that, again, the thighs activate and the hips activate. And then lift up into the chest, keeping the seat bones down on your heels if you can. And then come forward, spreading your fingers, spreading your palms. If you've got a bad back, then just come halfway down. Have a block for your head, pressing your forehead down into the block. So it's a useful approach to use a support under your head. So maybe if you've got a block handy, even if there's no tightness in your back, use a block under your head and just see how that feels. It gives you space in the chest so you can continue to lift the chest towards the chin. Press the forehead really firmly into the block. The area between the eyebrows, pressing into the block. Quietening the brain. Keep the arms extended, the arms straight, locking the outer elbows inwards. So applying gentle pressure onto the lower forehead, the area between the eyebrows, helps to quieten the brain. Come up onto your knees and then turn your toes under and come up into dog down. Take deep inhalations and exhalations. Maybe that block can help to support your head again. Maybe it needs to be higher up. Maybe you don't want it there at all. but just see if you can just press the forehead into the block. If the block doesn't reach, then use a bolster underneath your head or lift the block up a little. Just give gentle quietening action to your forehead. If your hands feel like they slip a little when you're bringing your head down this low, then grip the sides of the mat. Activate the kneecaps. Press in the kneecaps through to the backs of the knees. Activate the thighs. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards. So what we were doing yesterday, turning the fronts of the thighs so that you can feel that the backs of the thighs broaden outwards. And from there, you can pick up the seat bones even more. So the action of turning the front of the thighs inwards gives you facility to rotate the backs of the thighs outwards from the big toe side to the little toe side. And that, in course, gives you access into the seat bones, allowing you to lift the seat bones a little higher. Just breathe even, deep inhalations and exhalations. You can rest if I'm holding you in the pose for too long, but if you can stay and maintain, then do. Okay, and then step your feet forward, come up into standing position, and then get 2 blocks for your hands. Or just to feel the difference. So you can come into half uttanasana with the 2 blocks, but I really want you to try coming up a little bit higher. So if you've got a tabletop, or the back of a chair or the back of a sofa, then it would be good to come up a little higher, so kind of hip width. So have your feet wide apart and turn your toes in, so slightly wider apart than your hips. Have your hands on your hips, lift up into the chest and then hinge at the hips and then stretch your arms forward. So just come in this halfway point. This is better for you if you've got any back problems. Just come halfway like this. I want you to press your hands really firmly into the mat, into the lift. And then tighten your kneecaps. Draw your kneecaps through to the backs of the knees. Turn the fronts of your thighs inwards so that you feel the backs of the thighs broaden outwards. And then pick up the seat bones and the tailbone away from the backs of the thighs. Keep the head lifted. Keep the chin and the chest driving towards the arms. Just breathing even, deep inhalations and exhalations, listening to the breath. So see if you can bring your heart area in line with your hips. So really activate the legs. The more you activate the legs, the more you turn the fronts of the thighs inwards, the more you can pick up the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, and the more you can stretch the chest forwards. Okay, and then just come up into a standing position. So in this pose, it's the kind of anterior, posterior, pelvic action that really counts. So it's the cat and the cow pose, isn't it? It's the turning in or the turning out. Just come down onto all fours for a moment, and then we'll just do the cat and cow just to remind ourselves of the action. So come onto the hands. So the hands are underneath your shoulders, your knees are underneath your hips, and then lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, lifting the tailbone up to the ceiling and then projecting chin and the chest forwards. So the more you lift the seat bones here, the more you can then extend into the front chest. Turn the crease of the elbows to face the front to broaden the collarbone. Lengthen from the knees into the toes, pressing the shins into the floor, lifting the seat bones, projecting the chin and the chest forwards, and then tuck the tailbone in. Draw your chin towards your chest so that the back rounds. So while this is a nice stretch, this is not really the stretch we want for most standing poses, or most poses at all. So just go back to neutral. So just let go of the seat bones, let go of the chest, and then distinctly turn the tailbone up to the ceiling, lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, so you really stick the tailbone up towards the ceiling, and then lengthen the front chest to the abdomen, to the diaphragm, to the collarbone, to the chin, keeping the head lifted. The more you keep the head lifted, the more you keep the chin driving forwards, the more you can draw yourself into your shoulder blade region. Okay, and then just gently release. So it's this action, this turning in of the tailbone and turning out of the tailbone. Just do that action a couple of times so you kind of get really familiar with it. And then come back to your lift. So again, have your feet just slightly wider than hip width apart, turning your toes in. Tighten your kneecaps. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards. So the backs of the thighs broaden out, and then hinge at the hips, like you're doing the cow pose. So you're lifting the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs. Lengthen out your arms, and then see if you can lift the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, the tailbone up towards the ceiling. But it has to come from this turning action of the legs. So tighten the kneecaps, turn the inner knees towards the back of the room. Turn the fronts of the thighs inwards so that you feel the backs of the thighs broaden out, and then lift those seat bones higher. That's it. That's better. So lift the seat bones higher, keeping the head lifted. It's almost like you're hanging away from whatever you've got your arms lifted onto. So tighten the kneecaps, push the inner knees away from each other, and turn the inner knees towards the back of the room. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, the backs of the thighs outwards, and then picking up the seat bones. Okay, and then gently release. And then come into Tadasana. So breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations. Just listening to the breath. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards your chest, and then step or jump the feet apart. Turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out. And then rather than Tadasana legs, where we're turning the thighs inwards, we turn the thighs outwards. So it's still Tadasana legs, but we're just rotating the legs in the opposite direction. Because just turn them inwards, and then the hips kind of feel like they're unlevel. Turn them outwards, and it feels like you can really bring the hips to the front. Lift up into the chest, stretch out, and then come over. Find the shin. Turn the front of the thigh, especially of that front leg, from the big toe side to the little toe side. Turning the inner knee towards the big toe. Turning the abdomen up to the ceiling. Just breathing even deep inhalations and exhalations, keeping that back leg dead straight. If you can look up, then do. Otherwise, if that's not right for your neck, just look forwards or look down. Come back to the centre, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in and the left leg and foot all the way out. And again, turn the legs, turn the front of the thigh inwards, the front of the thigh, sorry, not inwards, turn the fronts of the thighs outwards. And then come back, just reaching over and then looking up. Breathing even inhalations and exhalations. The more you turn that front leg, the more you can lift the chest. Come back to the center, bring your feet parallel, and then step or jump your feet back together. And then come into Tadasana. So we've turned the legs inwards. So for Tadasana, we turn the legs inwards. For Trikonasana, we turn the legs outwards. So maybe there's a feeling of freedom in the hips where we're really kind of activating those legs. Lift up into the chest, elevating the heart area to the ceiling, stretching the fingers down to the floor. Bring your arms out nice and wide in toward your chest, and then step or jump, go slightly wider than last time for Virabhadrasana 2. Turn the left toes in slightly, the right leg and foot all the way out. And again, we want to turn these thighs outwards so that the inner thigh rotates outwards. The big toe side of the leg rotates to the little toe side of the leg. Both legs. Stretch out the arms, keep the back leg straight, and then bend and descend. Find a right angle with that right leg. Breathe evenly. Turn that leg so the inner knee rotates around towards the outer knee. Do the same with the back leg. Inner knee rotates around to the outer knee. So around the front of the knee. Inner knee rotates across the top of the knee to the outer knee. Keep pushing that bent knee towards the wall behind you. And then straighten the leg. Swap the feet around, turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. And then come back to the front. Again, these legs around, turning this inner knee around the front of the knee towards the outside of the knee. Keeping that back leg straight, bend. And find a right angle. Breathe, keep your jaw soft, keep your tongue soft. Turn inner knee around to the outer knee, along the top of the knee. Both legs. Okay, straighten the leg. Bring the feet back to the front. And then step or jump the feet back together, come back into Tadasana. And then bring your feet hip width apart. Turn your toes in slightly, activate your kneecaps. Lift up into the chest. Now if coming forwards all the way down in Uttanasana is too strong for your back, then go to the lift that we had at the beginning. And then come forwards onto there. If you're doing full Uttanasana, raise your arms up and then hook your thumb into the crease of the elbow, the opposite elbow, wrap your fingers around the opposite elbow and then come forward and then hang down. So this can be strong for a stiff lower back, but personally I quite like it. When my back is feeling stiff, this actually helps to stretch my back out, but that's my back. In general, forward bending like this isn't recommended for the lower back. So you come onto the left instead. It just gives you more control over it. So you might start on the left and then feel, well, actually my back feels okay. And then you can come down a little lower. And then maybe you can come into full Uttanasana. But it's all about just observing what your body is doing today. how your body is responding to the pose. Turn the fronts of the legs inwards. Turn the inner knees towards the back of the room, so that the backs of the thighs really consciously broaden outwards, and you can pick up the seat bone, lifting the tailbone, letting the top of the body hang down. And then release your hands down to the floor. And then walk your hands towards the end of your mat and then come into dog down. Have your hands shoulder width apart, your feet hip width apart. And then activate your legs in the way that we've been doing in Tadasana, tightening the kneecaps, turning those inner knees to rotate towards the back of the room, hitting the fronts of the thighs into the backs of the thighs, turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, so your heels should start to separate. And then pick up the seat bones away from the backs of the thighs, lift the tailbone up to the ceiling. Breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, listening to the breath. Okay, and then come down onto all fours and then just sit back on your heels. Okay, so we're going to go into the pigeon pose, rajakapotasana. So you can do this from the floor, from all fours, like you're going to go into the cat and the cow. So you bring that front knee forwards, make the contact with the wrist, bring the foot out to the side, and then you stretch that leg back, and then to come out you just walk your leg back. So you can either do it on all fours, or we're going to do it from dog down. So if you're doing it from dog down, then you come up and then you bend that knee forward, and then the rest of the poses are the same. So decide, are you going to come into rajakapotasana from all fours? So if you're avoiding dog down, do it from all fours. Otherwise, come back up into dog down. Just observe your breath. Listen to the sound of the breath. So whether you're on all fours or coming into rajakapotasana from dog down, the following instructions are pretty much the same. Bend your right knee and then bring your right knee to make contact with the right wrist, with the left leg underneath, with the right foot underneath the left leg, and then stretch that right leg, so that back leg away, and then lift up into the chest, lengthening the heart area upwards. So it's the left leg that we're stretching behind us, and then consciously Tadasana-rise that back leg. Turn the front of the thigh inwards, and you'll find that your hips re-level. So turn the front of the thigh with that back leg inwards, turning the inner knee towards the ceiling. Lift up into the heart area. Breathing evenly. Push from the hip into the bent knee. And then bring the palms flat down onto the floor. Turn your toes under that back leg and then step in a little, and then either go back onto all fours or back up into dog down. So whichever is right for you, which feels more appropriate for you. Just breathe even, deep inhalations and exhalations. And then bend your left knee, bring your left knee to make contact with your left wrist, with the left foot underneath the right thigh, and then walk back that right thigh, that right leg, come up onto the fingertips, lengthen the heart area upwards, turning that back leg, that straight leg, turning it inwards, turning the front of the thigh inwards, so that the inner knee of that back leg rotates to the ceiling. into the chest, lift up into the abdomen. So breathe in with a soft jaw, with a soft tongue. And then just bring the palms flat down onto the floor again, turn the toes in, just step in with that back leg a little, and then come back up into dog down. And then come back just into a seated position. So just come into cross legs and just hold onto your knees for a moment, lift up into the chest. Take a deep inhalation. And with the exhalation, turn to the right side. As you turn, lengthen the abdomen from the left to the right, the ribs and the shoulders from the left to the right, keeping your head level, just looking forwards. And then come back to the center, hold onto your knees, lift up into your chest. Take a deep inhalation and then turn to the left. Drawing your abdomen across your ribs, across your shoulders, across, keeping your neck soft. And then come back to the center. So we're going to do a restorative pose that helps to just stretch out your back. It's called the side lying stretch. So have a bolster. You can do this with 2 bolsters, or you can lift the bolster up a little bit. But I think, to be honest, I think 1 bolster is probably plenty for most of us. If you haven't got a bolster, then you can just put some cushions underneath the hip. So you're going to bring the bolster onto the top of the hip and into the abdominal region. So you just roll, and just go a bit more space. So you just roll onto your side so that it's the side of the abdomen that is supported mainly, and then you just lengthen yourself out along the floor. So you make sure that you're in a good straight line. So at first you can have a good stretch, just working to push into the hands, into the legs. So it's nice to have a bit of a stretch to start off with, but then, because it's a restorative pose, once you've had a stretch, then you just let yourself just rest into the bolster. So you let gravity do the work. It may initially feel a little unusual in your back. If it feels painful or uncomfortable, then just adjust until the pose feels less so. But with all restorative poses, you just let the body yield to gravity. So it's the abdominal wall that is connected to the bolster, the top of the hip that's connected to the bolster, and then we just let the rest of the body release into the floor. So as is the way the restorative poses, I won't speak as much because it's about trying to relax into the pose And it's difficult to relax if you're having to constantly listen. So just focus on your breath and allow the body to yield into gravity. So just allow the body to yield to gravity. Just one more minute. Okay, to come out of the pose, you're just going to bend your knees, bring your knees down onto the floor, release your arms, and then just roll onto your abdomen, and then push your elbows into the floor, and then sit yourself back on your knees. Just feel how your back feels. Maybe it feels a little uneven. We're just going to address that in a moment. And then you're just going to do the other side. So you sit with the other hip close to the wall. I'm just going to kind of change direction so that I'm still facing the screen, but you can just roll over to your other side. So remember, it's the top of the hip and the abdominal wall. So just roll onto there, stretch your arms out, stretch your legs out. Have a good old stretch to start off with. So lengthen into the arms, lengthen into the legs. Make sure that the body is in a good straight line and you're directly on your side. And then once you've had stretch, then just let go of the stretch and yield to gravity. This is where the work comes. So although there's minimal effort, there should always be minimal effort with a restorative pose. You stay in the pose for an extended duration, and then bolster and the gravity pretty much do the work for you. So continue to observe the breath, observe the expansion and contraction of the chest with the in-breath, observing the abdomen's role in the breath. Just letting go into the floor. Okay, and then just bend your knees, just roll onto your front, come onto your elbows, and then push yourself up into a seated position, just sitting back on your heels, just observing the freedom in your back. And then bring the bolster between your knees and then stretch forwards into child's pose, into supported child's pose. Just rest your arms on the floor either side of the elbow, rest your head on one side, but then alternate which side of your head you rest on. So have your arms wide enough apart so that you're not supporting your weight with your arms, you're just letting the body rest into the floor. Gently turn the tailbone inwards, but very gently. So again, just resting into the bolster. Don't forget to swap the side of your head that you rest on, just to give your neck an even stretch. Okay, and then just push your elbows into the floor and then come up into a seated position. Just observing that lightness of your energy. And then have the bolster for underneath your knees. Have a blanket for underneath your head. just make sure it's evenly folded. And then just come down onto your back into shavasana. And then just rest yourself down into the floor. Just make sure you're in a good straight line, and then you will relax more easily. Unhook the muscles of your arms and your legs. Allow the body to completely relax into the floor. Let go of the muscles of the arms and the legs so that you become heavy on the floor. And that heaviness is an important stage of the pose, because out of that heaviness, perhaps you'll feel a strong, energetic lightness that radiates from the bone. Observe that energy radiating from the bones and into the muscles and into the organs. Use your in-breath and your out-breath to distribute that feeling of lightness down into the toes and into the fingers and into the top of the head. Filling the body with healing, positive energy, radiating into the muscles and the organs and the flesh and the skin. Basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. Which is just right for a warm day. Okay, when you're ready to disturb yourself, just gently wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers, and then bend your knees. Bring your feet onto the bolster, have the knees together, the feet apart, just resting your back into the floor. And then draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just a gentle massage on the spine. And then gently roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out your top leg, come back up into the seated position. Just a final cross legs with your hands in the masti, just a final spinal lift. Just close your eyes, draw your breath in through your nose and down into your abdomen. That samanic breath, just bringing consciousness to your energy. The energy that you have released through your practice this morning, that good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends and the twists and the reclining poses bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you have created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And gently release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. So, through that sequence of fairly intense standing poses and then quietening restorative poses, hopefully you feel like you're full of good energy to put into your day. So, thank you very much for joining me.